my friends, thank you so much for joining me for a brand new video today where I'm going to show you something I have never showed on my channel before. So back in the early spring, I had a couple of people asking me here locally about resin, wanting me to teach some resin classes, and I'd never really even considered it. But I thought, okay, let's give it a whirl. So I ordered a few things from Amazon and I started playing with resin and I fell in love with it. Well, when I did the Mystique pendant a few weeks ago, I had several requests for a Mystique earring. That's wonderful. I said, I can do it. But finding the cabochons that I needed for the project was non-existent. I could find maybe a big one that would look good, but not a little one, or they were out of stock of this, or they didn't have a color or something. So I said, okay, I'm gonna show you guys how to use your own resin to make your own cabochons for the Mystique earrings, or just your own cabochons. It's completely up to you. Now, you do need to know, and I will tell you this up front, I am not a resin guru, okay? I am not coming on here saying that I know everything there is to know about resin, and I may do things a little bit different from you because I learned by being self-taught and watching other YouTubers talk about resin and do resin, and I followed the package instructions. So don't anybody think I'm sitting here saying, hey, I am the bomb at this, because I'll be the first to tell you, I'm still a student myself, but I can rack out some pretty good cabochons, and I hope that by the end of this video, you'll know how to as well. The first thing you need to know about resin, if you get it on you, it's not gonna come off of your clothes. I found that out after getting it on my favorite shirt. I was so upset. So you're gonna want an apron of some sorts, and I think you like my apron. That's right, hot mess, because we on the Hot Mess Express as we learn how to do this today. So definitely some apron or old clothes or something so that you will not get anything on you, okay? That's the first thing. The second thing is you're gonna need some resin. Now, they make UV resin, and I'm gonna do a video another day with some UV resin, but today I'm gonna be using the Amazing Cast resin. It is a 2-part resin, all right? You have to have equal amounts of your part A and your part B for your resin to work. Now, I'm gonna link some things down below me here that I found on Amazon. I found a seller who has a beginner's kit, and it is the best beginner's kit for the price that I have seen. I bought one myself, I tried it out. It is an amazing kit. So I'm gonna link that below, all right? I'm also gonna link this amazing resin. I sell it in my store. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it at Hobby Lobby or just about anywhere. Now, just because I use this particular brand does not mean you have to use that particular brand. You can pretty much use any brand you'd like, as long as it's the part A, part B, so you get the mixtures right for what I'm going to teach you today. All right. The other thing you're going to need, besides your resin and an apron, is you're going to need molds. Now, I like to use silicone molds like this, you know, like silicone bakeware. These are silicone molds. These are specifically made for resin, but you really could use them for anything. And you will be able to find these little molds in just about every shape and size that you want. All right, these molds are fantastic. This is the mold that I'm gonna be using today, and this is the one I'm gonna link below for you. This mold right here is what I used to do my cabochons for the Mystique earrings, and the ones that I'm gonna be using today are these two right here. This is a 16mm round cabochon and a 14x10 oval cabochon. So those are the two that I'm gonna be using specifically today, but I've taught the resin class twice in my store. The first time I taught using this silicone mold here. This mold is great because it's round cabochons. And as much as they loved that class, I used this to show them how to pop their things out like I'm gonna do for you. And when they did, they all loved this mold because it had so many shapes and sizes. So when I did the second class, I used this one. So again, I'm gonna link this one for you here. It's a really, really great mold. I think you'll really, really enjoy this mold. Now, what I'm using these for is specifically jewelry. So again, you can use them for whatever. I'm gonna be using this for my jewelry. So with our molds, you're also gonna need measuring cups. Now, the kit that I'm gonna link below actually comes with silicone little measuring cups. These are great because they're reusable. You can reuse them over and over again, and they are wonderful. You can also find these little plastic measuring cups, like little medicine cups. You can find these online. You can find these at your pharmacy, wherever. They do make silicone cups that are like this, but they're this size. So you can use those as well. Any of those will work, but you'll definitely want a bigger mixing cup and some smaller cups to mix with. The other thing you're gonna need, 2 sizes of wooden sticks, all right? Or just whatever you've got at home that can be a stirrer. It doesn't have to be a wooden stick, but you probably do want it to be disposable or at least silicone where you can clean it off and reuse it, okay? I use the big one to actually stir my resin, and I use the smaller ones to stir what's called my mica powders. Now, mica powders are what you're gonna use to actually give your piece your color. Now, there's some beautiful, beautiful clear resin cabs that will work wonderfully. For a majority of what I'm gonna be doing, I'm gonna be using my cabochons for bead embroidery. So a solid color is awesome to me, and I love that. So I'm gonna be using these little colors here to give it color. Now, pretty much the color you see in the bag is close to the color that you're gonna get when you actually mix it in with your resin, okay? You can find mica powders online. If you get that kit I was talking about, it actually comes with a lot of mica powders that will last you forever. You can also find them in the scrapbooking section. There's lots of places that you can find that have this little mica powder. A lot of times they're not in little bags, they're in little tiny tubs. I actually have, so you can see, they come in little kind of tubs like this. So they come in all sorts of different colors, so you really have lots and lots of fun with those, okay? So those are some of the basic things that you're gonna need to kind of get started. Now, something else you just, you know, if you have it, one of these little throwaway syringes, little plastic syringes that does not have a needle in it, works great. If you have any little pipettes, which are those little slender tubes with the bulb on the end, those work really well to put resin into some of the smaller cavities that we have on our mold. So that way, you know, if you need something with just a little bit of room, that is the way to go. The only other thing I would have handy, you can use gloves. Definitely wear gloves if you want to. And I always have some little paper towels laying around when I mess with resin, because let me tell you, I make a mess. The only other thing that you're gonna see that I'm gonna use, or that I have, is I have this little blue silicone mat that is on my work surface that holds everything, and I don't have to worry about the resin spilling and getting on my work surface. So without further ado, let's learn how to use our resin. Okay, my friends, so we're ready to start mixing. Again, what I was talking about earlier is our resin comes, if you're using a 2-part resin, it comes in a part A and it comes in a part B, all right? We're gonna mix a ratio of 1 to 1, so equal parts. You really don't wanna get this on your skin because it can be harmful to your skin. So you wanna really, really try to be careful not to get it on it. That's why gloves work great. So just FYI for that. Now, when you pour, you can pretty much mix as much as you want to. Now, I actually have really big bottles because I've been mixing a lot of these, but the little small bottles that come with kits are awesome because they give you plenty to work with. Now, I'm gonna measure out here on my little cup. I'm gonna be as precise as I can when I measure. And I know you're not gonna be able to see it here, but I'm going to pour some of my resin. Now you can see that the resin that's coming out is like honey almost. So I kind of have to squeeze the bottle. It's a little bit of a thicker resin. And I want about 20 little milliliters, I think. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, and like I said, you want to try to be really precise with your measurements. So right now, I just got clear liquid in here, okay? So I'm gonna let this settle down here for a second, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get my part B now. There's all sorts of resins, so you'll notice this is actually a different color. It's almost got a yellowed tint to it, and that's just the color. And you're also gonna notice that when I pour it, it's a lot more liquidy. All right, so you really have to be careful and pay attention when you're pouring. So I did 20 little milliliters of my first one, so I'm gonna do 20 milliliters of the second. Okay, and that's exactly what I want. So I'm gonna set this to the side. Now, another thing you may wanna take precaution about is if you're by yourself using the resin, the smell, you smell it, but it's not too bad. But now, say like if you and a friend were to get together and do resin together, the smell can get kind of strong. Like, I think it was last Saturday or the Saturday before when I'm filming this video, we had 7 people in here doing the resin and it got really strong. So you might want to wear a mask as you do the resin, just so that way maybe the fumes don't get to you. I've not had an issue with that, but some people might, so just kind of putting that out there. Now, I'm gonna set my timer for 2 minutes. You want to make sure that you get this mixed really, really, really well as you're working with it, okay? If you don't, it's not gonna work out, okay? So we kind of have to be precise about our measurements and precise about our time. So I'm going to get this set here, and then I'm gonna come back and let you actually look down in this as I work with it so you can see. All right, so I've got my timer set for 2 minutes, and you can see there's some air bubbles there in my little resin, and that's okay. Now, as you can see, it's starting to kind of look like a cool galaxy Milky Way there on the inside of the cup. And that's what you want it to do. It's gonna get a really, really funky, milky look to it. And this is what we're kind of waiting to see. We're gonna keep stirring until it comes back clear again. Now, as you stir, you wanna make sure to come around the edges really well. Okay. Come around the edges really well, and every so often just take and wipe it off, and then come down back into your cup again, and you can see I still got a milky look to it. And it's beginning to be a little bit clear, and that's what we want. So I'm gonna keep mixing it until I get my 2 minutes up. All right, so I have stirred for 2 minutes. You can see that I have quite a few little air bubbles in here. So I'm gonna let it sit for just a few minutes. But what we're looking for is when we hold this up, we want that little drizzle that we're making, we want that to be completely clear. And that's what we've got. So I'm gonna let it sit and get some of these air bubbles get out. And then I'm gonna take and I'm gonna pour into my little cups some different resin amounts, so that way then I can start stirring my mica powder in there. Okay, so I've poured resin into each of my little cups here, and I've used a majority of what I've got left. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna really scrape down the sides of my silicone cup and get as much of this resin out as I possibly can. The less resin in my cup, the less cleanup I'm gonna have to do. So I'm just going to take and really scrape the insides of the cups, because I mean, there's so much resin. You know, 40 milliliters does not sound like a lot, or it does sound like a lot. I shouldn't say it that way. It does sound like a lot. And we want to use every bit of it that we can possibly use. We don't really want to waste any of it. So I'm just really getting in here and really scraping the sides and the bottom down. And that's why I like to use these bigger wooden sticks, because it helps me to get all of that out of the cup. Now, a little tip. This is what I do. I take a paper towel and I use the ones that you can break into sizes like this, and I fold it in half, and I take my 2 fingers and I put my fingers down inside of that little paper towel. Then I kind of press it down into the cup and turn and clean and get all my resin out of the cup. And I look up, I hold it up and make sure, and my cup is nice and clean because I scraped it out really good, and then I used a paper towel and got the resin. So I've got my resin cup clean, I've got those put away. Now comes the fun part. I'm ready to mix my mica powders with the resin. Now, I've let these little resin cups sit here for just a few minutes to get any air bubbles to come to the top that might be in the resin currently. Now, I've got in a habit of doing some darker colors, so I'm gonna pop it out for some spring colors here, and a green and a blue. Now, the mica powders, you can see the powders down in there. It's a very, very pigmented powder, and it only takes just a very little tiny bit of powder dropped into your cup. Now, if you want a really, really light, almost translucent color, use very, very little of this. If you want a deep, deep color, then you can use more of this resin, which I just put way too much. You don't want to do that much, okay? I'm going to show you the difference here. Oops. Okay, now I'm going to do a green. I'm going to do this green a little bit nicer here. So I'm just going to put just a little bit of green, not too much, into my little container. Like I said, these are going to last you forever. Now, don't do this. Don't do a huge clump like that. We only need just this little bit, not much at all there on our resin. Now, we're gonna mix it, and that's where these little skinny ones come in. So I'm gonna take and I'm gonna start mixing. Now I'm gonna mix and mix and mix and mix and mix, because as you mix, you're gonna start to see that color really take off and really cover up the top part of your color. But then when I hold it up to the bottom may still be clear, and we don't want that. So I'm just gonna keep on mixing. You wanna keep mixing and really scrape down the sides really, really well to get a lot of that off the sides and to get the mica powders busted up. If you don't get your mica powders busted up, what's gonna happen is when you pour it, you're gonna see little flecks or specks of it in your finished piece, and you may not like that. I mean, some people do. Like, we did a pumpkin class a few weeks ago, and we really liked the specks when we did our pumpkins, because we actually made our pumpkin caps. So my green is looking like Slimer green there. I'm really, really liking it. So I'm gonna jive with it. Now I'm gonna set that to the side. And again, I'm gonna let the air bubbles kind of come to the top and get out. Now I'm gonna do my blue. So I'm gonna, again, mix, 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 mix. This blue is gonna be a really pretty blue. Okay, and again, this is gonna take me a little longer to mix just because I got pour happy and put a ton of mica powder in it, which I really shouldn't have done, but that's all right. Okay, and I'm gonna mix, 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 and I always look at the bottom and make sure I see no clear on the bottom. That lets me know that I've got the whole thing really mixed through and through, and you can see that blue is gonna be so pretty. I love being able to do this and to make my own cabochons, because then that way I've got something to match just about everything I want to do. So those are my solid mica powders. I also wanted to show you these really cool Camilian flakes. Now, these things right here are a lot more expensive than your regular mica powders. I want to say when I bought this back in the summer, it was either $11.99 or $14.99, and you get 5 of these colors in a pack. And they're all these really cool, like metallic-y, like there's a green, and then here's a cool fuchsia. Let's see, there's a teal. So there's some really, really cool colors in that. And again, I'll link it down below so that you can see. And there's a really dark blue. So the thing with these colors is it takes a lot more of this to make a solid color. If I was to just put a little bit of this into my cup, I'm still gonna have a clear resin with just some of these cool looking flakes in it. So I'm gonna have to put about as much of the blue that I did in there. Whoops. So I'm gonna have to put a good bit, and you're gonna see kind of how I'm doing it here. And I love it. I always feel like, oh, like a little queen with all the glitter that kind of pops out of this thing. But it takes a lot, all right? So you can see there, it takes a good bit. Now, this is just like the others. I've got to mix to get this mixed really, really well. And so you can kind of see what it's happening there. It's changing that to not just a plain old clear project anymore. And the more you mix this Chameleon, the more you get not just a clear finish, you get a really pretty, almost solid dark base to it. So if you're wondering kind of what that looks like finished, check that out. Is that not cool? There's one. Here's one that's finished like that. I mean, you get that really cool sparkly effect. Here's one that I've done in the heart mold that I really, really like. So you can do some really cool mixes. Here are, let's see, I don't remember what color I did on these, but like these are some of the letters in the Chameleon as well. So you can do some pretty cool ones with those. I have to say, those are my favorite just because they're so sparkly. Okay. So I've got the sides mixed really, really well. And again, I'm gonna let this one sit and let those air bubbles come to the top. Now, the great thing about using a silicone mold that's bendable, you know, the whole 9 yards, is there's no special prep work that goes into it. You just have to look at all the little holes that you're gonna use and make sure they're clean, that there's no little pieces of, say, Chameleon flakes that's got into your mold, or no little piece of like dried resin that's sticking into the mold. So you just wanna check on that. Have a few little Chameleon flakes here. And that's why I like to have some Q-tips laying around so I can kind of clean out that mold if I need to. Q-tips and a little bit of alcohol, not a lot on these silicone molds, definitely not a lot. So I'm gonna make sure the molds that I wanna use are just really, really nice and clean. And normally you can just use your fingers for that. Nothing special that you have to do. Okay, here we go. So I'm gonna start with the first color that I did. And because at this time, most of those air bubbles should be finished and you should be good to go. All right, so I start with the first color and then I kind of work my way. Now, if I'm gonna do multiple colors like this, I'll go ahead and decide, like, okay, I want the green to be, you know, this one here, this big oval, or I want the blue to be these two hearts, or whatever I want. I go ahead and plan it out. Now, normally what I try to do is I try to pour enough resin that I fill up the mold, or almost fill up the mold. On this one, you can see I did 3 colors on this one, and I mean, I filled the mold up pretty good. Not all of them are full, but a majority of the sizes that I wanted are full. And that's kind of what you want when you do it. Because if you're going to get all this out to mix your resin, that's sort of what you want anyways. So let's pour the resin into our molds. Okay. All right. So I'm going to take my little resin here, my pretty little resin, and I am going to use this one to pour, I don't know, I'm going to do some of these over here. I'm going to do these little things. So I'm going to start pour, and you can see I'm going very slow here as I pour. And then when it starts to get a little bit full, you'll notice that I kind of hold back on it, and that's why I keep this little stick with me. So that way, if any gets out or if I need to grab it from the little thing here, I can. All right, so then I'm going to pour this one. And you can see I'm just going really slow. And as it starts to get full, you can use that to stop. Now, I want to make sure that it doesn't overflow, but I want it to the top. So that's what you've got to work on. So I actually have already poured because it was kind of dark as I was trying to pour this. So I'm starting it over for you. But I'm going to take it, I'm going to leave it into my little cup here. And I'm going to kind of squeeze the cup just a little bit and let it start to pour out into my mold. And as you can see, I'm pouring it slowly. I'm not going fast. And I'm pretty much going to fill up the whole mold cavity here with my resin. Now, as that cavity starts to fill up, I can lean back a little bit on it and use my little stir to stop it. And you can see there how full it is. It's nice and full. So now I'm going to do this one as well. So I'll have a pair. Everything I do, I try to do in a pair. So that way I don't have to worry about it if I want to make earrings or something like that. So you can see I'm just being really slow pouring, making sure I fill the whole cavity. And then just kind of pull back on it like that. Now, a good way that you can try to see if it's overflowed is you can take your stir and you can come straight across it and see if there's any that is, you know, pulling out. And if it does, that's fine. No need to worry. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish pouring. I think I got some clear resin. Yep, got some clear resin in that one. So I'm going to pour some more of this one. And I think I'm only going to have enough to do that one. I don't think I'm going to have enough to do two. So I could do some smaller, something a little bit smaller here with this one. Now I'm deliberately going to overflow this so you can see. All right, so I went a little too much here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to just take my little stick and go right across it. And you'll see there I've got some excess resin. And I'm going to get that excess resin off so that I'm left with a nice filled cavity. Now I'm going to go ahead and fill in this little second cavity here. All right, and that's probably about all that I'm gonna get out of this color cup. So I'm just gonna continue to pour. Now, if you'll notice, like in these two that I've just finished here, you'll notice that some of the air bubbles are coming to the top. That's why I like to have a little toothpick or something like that that I can kind of stir around and get some of these air bubbles out, so I don't have to worry about those air bubbles. So I'm going to keep filling in this cavity and then I'll show you what it looks like. So once I've got it poured now, you'll see that I've filled up several of the cavities here with my different colors that I want to do. And these two right here are the two that I was telling you that I was using for the Mystique pendant. This is the Mystique earrings. This is a 16 millimeter round and the 14 by 10 oval. Now this right here, I'm gonna use a little toothpick to kind of get any excess off the little edges. This is where I had to scrape this one down a little bit because it got a little over full there. So I just kind of scrape it off just like that. And then I'm going to use a little paper towel to get any off around the edges. So that way I can let this dry and be ready to get some awesome cabochons out. Okay, my friends. Now, this is going to 100% completely freak some of you out when we do this. Because now that I've got it poured, what I need to do is I'm going to gently lift up and drop it. Very gently. Want to make sure that everything is settled really nice down into my little crevices, so that way I don't get any little air bubbles actually underneath what's going to be the front of my piece. Okay, now depending on where you live, depending on how cold it is, depending on how hot it is, whatever, it's gonna take about 24 to 48 hours for this to dry, all right? How you know it's dry is when you run your finger over the top of it. If it's slick and it's hard, then you know it's done and it's ready to be popped out. If you do your finger like this and it's still tacky, you know that number one, if it's after that 24 hours, number one, either it's not ready yet and you need to give it a little while longer, or you did not get it mixed correctly. If you did not get it mixed correctly, it's gonna feel very tacky when you do it. And when you pull it out of the mold, you will literally be able to like fold it in half, all right? It's very flexible and it's not a hard resin like you want. But the good thing is, after about 24 to 48 hours, you will have a nice, hard resin to work with. And the great thing about these molds is literally all you do is push from the back and then you have an awesome new cabochon to work with. So let's see, that was one of my blues. Ooh, that's pretty. I know you can't really see it on the camera, but it's got like an iridescent finish. It's really, really pretty. Let me see here. I think I got a yellow popped in here. Oh, that's sunshine right there, you guys. So they're really, really fun when you get to pop them out and actually see the finished piece and see what they're gonna look like. It's just so much fun. And you feel so just fulfilled and just over the moon because you made that. Like you made it and now you get to bead with it and bead whatever you want. So these are great because like I said, now you have a custom color or a custom size or custom shape that you want for either to wire wrap or to bead crochet, not bead crochet, Lord help me, bead embroider, or to encase with peyote stitch, cubic right angle weave, whatever you want to do. If you have a friend who's a beader as well, these also make great gifts because you can give your friend custom cabochons as a gift. So they're a lot of fun. So I promise you, if you start doing it, you're gonna get hooked because this is literally so much fun. Now, the first time you do it, you're gonna feel all thumbs completely. You're gonna be like, oh my gosh, and you're gonna feel like you're pouring it in too fast and everything else. Love it. But I promise you, once you pop these first ones out, you're just gonna be amazed. So far, again, I've taught 2 classes at my store on using the resin. They both were full classes and people loved doing the resin. So don't be afraid of it. I know it's something new, but don't be afraid of it, okay? Again, I've got links down below of everything that you've seen me use today. And I'll go ahead and tell you because I know somebody's going to ask. I am not getting paid by any of these companies to use their resin or their molds or their kits or whatever. These are just some things that I've purchased and I can personally say work really well or they're worth the money or whatever, okay? Because I won't ever use anything or suggest something that I don't personally use. So the links there are for you to use and to get the most bang for your buck when you're working for these and you're doing for them, okay? So come back next week. I hope that you are able to make your own cabochons for class next week because next week we're going to make the Mystique earrings and I cannot wait to use my custom cabochons in my project. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Again, I know today was a little bit different, but I do hope that you enjoy learning how to do something a little bit different that we can still apply to all of our beading fun. You guys have a great week and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.